Hello and welcome everyone to another PowerPlay Wednesday webinar where we're going to learn about integrating injury prevention into your fitness programs. We have today with us Scott Hopson. You can see him in the top right corner of your screen. But before we get started, just want to introduce PowerPlay to those of you who are new to us, don't know who we are, not familiar. But to do that, I'd like to kind of give you the background story on who we are, because it's based on where we came from. So our brand roots actually came from rocket science. Whole body vibration is what we do, and is originally from the Soviet cosmonaut program, where they were using vibration to help combat bone and muscle loss as the cosmonauts returned from space. So as you fast forward that to current times, we took our rocket science and interstellar background to create our promise to you, which is a total body health and fitness solution that optimizes and enhances movement and recovery for anything that you do, no matter your ability, age, or stage in life. Also with us, we have the team. Myself, I'm Jeremy Danielle in the middle picture. We have Gary Lewis and Mindy Kreis. We are the commercial team here at PowerPlay that supports all of our B2B interactions. We are a team that cares a lot about helping you grow and chase after the dream that you had, creating your own business, working within a larger one to help support you in any way that we can. And so we like to let you know that we are always here for you, and our contact information is always easily available, and our emails are right here on the screen. Today, we're also brought to you in partnership with the Club Spa and Fitness Association. They are the sole national body for fitness, spa, and wellness professionals in the private club sector. They specialize in driving community through education, professional development, and putting research best practices into the forefront for people in the private club sector for fitness, spa, and wellness. They do this through regional roundtables, webinars like this one. They have white papers. They have everything that you need, including networking, to grow, develop, and learn what you need to know about doing the best that you can in the fitness side of the private club sector. Today, we have Scott Hopson with us. Scott is CEO and founder of Pivotal, the co-founder of PTA Global, education director at the Gray Institute on the education team in Exos, and sits on the advisory board over all things PowerPlate. Scott is an industry veteran and expert, been doing this a long time, been presenting all over the world. And instead of me rambling on about Scott, I'm going to let Scott take over from here.
Thank you, good sir. Let's just share my screen. Confirm we're good, and away we go. Everything look good on your side? I've shared my screen now, Jeremy.
Yep.
Can you see it? Perfect. Okay, so we've got about 30 minutes together, and this topic of injury prevention, two things that I will use as a premise to the next 30 minutes together. Number one, I'm going to change that language a little bit from injury prevention to our ability to mitigate the risk of injury. Now, it might sound like semantics, but it's not. For example, if we were talking about health, you could have a client, an athlete, a patient, or yourself, and you could eat right, sleep right, exercise right, deal with your stress right, breathe right, meditate, and yet you could still wake up tomorrow and have cancer because of your genes, or suddenly have a heart attack because it was in your blood. I feel the same way about movement and exercise and training. There are things we can do to lower the risk of getting busted when we exercise, train, compete, or practice. Yes. Can we say we prevent injury? I don't know about that. My daughter puts her foot on the ground in soccer, rotates, and someone hits her. That's her ACL gone, and it's nothing to do with how she trained. So number one, we're going to talk about mitigating injury risk. There are definitely some big rocks. Number two, I want to show how we authentically, in my company, when we're coaching one-on-one, when we're coaching teams or entire organizations, a couple of ways we authentically integrate whole body vibration, PowerPlay, into what we do. We haven't got time in 30 minutes to show you the full breadth and depth of an entire system, but I can show you real tangible ways and techniques via video that we do it. But before we do that, I think it's a good idea to show you the principles that we at Pivotal anchor to when we talk about injury prevention, because that really sets the stage on how we would use vibration. So instead of thinking of the technique first, we've got to look at the principles and the strategies that would lead to the technique. The big three rocks for me when I'm talking about this concept of injury prevention, number one, is we have to consider the purpose of the client or the athlete. Three big things within that. Number one, what are there or is there movement quality like? I don't care if you're trying to look better naked, be pain-free, play with the grandkids, or get bigger, faster, stronger to compete in soccer, rugby, basketball. If you lack the requisite movement quality, there will be a train wreck waiting. Injury will come your way. So number one is, how can we use vibration, as well as everything else we do, to upgrade movement quality? At Pivotal, we call that effective and efficient motion. And I found very few things do that like whole body vibration power play. Number two, what's the movement demand? Okay, so I might have great hip mobility, great thoracic spine mobility, great ankle and foot mobility. But can I actually perform the movement I need in the game of life or the game of sport? Can I actually get deep enough in that squat to tie my shoelaces? Yes or no? And then finally, what is the skill demand? Great, you've got that lovely deep squat. You've got that great rotation. Does it help you to hit a tennis ball better? Because now there's a skill involved. So the first thing when it comes to purpose is movement quality, movement demand, and skill demand. Two of those I'm going to show you today how I have found in nearly 20 years of using power play is a game changer. Because the primary concern I have as a coach is movement quality. And then I got to take that movement quality and put it into the movement demand that they need for the skill in life or sport. Number two, capacity. Okay, they got the movement side, but do they have the system tolerance to do what they want to do? Mentally, emotionally, physically, nutrition and lifestyle. Do all the systems in the body actually have the capacity to now do that thing? And if they don't, i.e., don't sleep enough, don't hydrate enough, as two very simple examples, you're still going to get injured. Because lack of sleep and dehydration, two of the biggest indicators that you're going to get busted. Got system tolerance. Did I develop the work capacity I need in the areas of the body I needed it? For example, a cyclist might have a really big VO2, might have a really good anaerobic threshold. But if they don't have the required power in their legs, every time they have to sprint or climb a hill on that bike, they get burned by the competition. Had the system tolerance, I didn't have the tissue tolerance. And then finally, what engine size do they need? Do they have a big enough engine to do what it is they want to do? I could have all the other prerequisites, but if my battery doesn't last long enough, game over. And then finally, resiliency. And that really brings in this concept of recovery and regeneration, but it's also bigger than that. If you look at the word resilience, it actually comes from the idea that a system, anything in life, from a plant to a machine to our bodies, can we absorb stress? Can we literally be deformed by stress? Don't forget, exercise breaks down the cells of the body, it's deforming us. Then in the process, can we release our own energy, reset and repeat? To be resilient in the game of life and sport means that you've got to be able to get broken down a bit, release the energy, reset and repeat. So those three big buckets would be an entire one-day workshop. What I want to do is give you a couple of quick principles and show you how it applies to using vibration. Now, here's the honest truth in my life after 25 years of coaching now, is that when someone says, how do you build programs for injury prevention or reduce pain or get bigger, faster, stronger? The honest answer is, I don't know yet, it depends. Everything is context dependent. So when we talk about injury prevention, the first thing you have to get clarity on is what is the context of that injury prevention? First principle, the body's architecture is a physiological response to one thing. In other words, how you function, how you look, how your bones, muscles, joints, nerves Every cell in the body is built, the architecture is based on our response to stress, whether it's negative or positive. We can have eustress, we can have de-stress. We need both in life. But underneath that, you'll see there's 4 big buckets: environmental, psychosocial and emotional, biological and physiological, anatomical and structural. So if we're going to talk injury prevention, we can't just think about the anatomical structural part, because I could have great muscles, bones, joints, connective tissue. I could have great movement patterns. I could have great engine size and all the other prerequisites. But if I'm in a stressful environment, I have relationships that are breaking me down, I'm not sleeping because of the stress, then my environmental, psychosocial buckets of stress are gonna lead to injury. So when we talk about injury prevention, we have to consider all of those. Another thing is we have to start thinking outside of some of the guidelines we've been given. They've kind of been rammed down our throat. Now, my disclaimer here is that they're not incorrect, but they're very much incomplete. One example, we have become obsessed in training and exercise with the idea of neutral spine. Whether we're squatting, doing push-ups, planks, bridges, rotations, we're obsessed with keeping our spine locked in neutral. The problem is neutral is not synonymous with stable, contrary to what we think. In fact, often in life, we have to go outside neutral and get back safely. And not only do we have to go outside neutral, you have to do it at different speeds, different loads in different directions. Look at the screen now. You've got golfers, you've got soccer players, you've got martial artists, tennis, you've got kids, you've got adults. These are real life movements that these people perform hundreds, thousands of times a day in practice, let alone per week, per month, per year. Look at one of those and tell me, are any of them in neutral? Now, there's a time for neutral, i.e. under a heavy back squat. Yeah, you got 200 pounds on your spine, you're in neutral and you're locked. But when you go to swing that golf club, boy, is that far outside neutral. And not only is it far outside neutral, it's based on performing a skill and task with a lot of speed and So if my training programs never go outside neutral, I'm probably exposing myself to risk. That's the paradox. This is going to show up when I share my videos of some of the ways we move on power play to get outside neutral, but get back safely. And don't forget that power plate goes up and down, side to side, front and back, 30 to 50 times a second. Not only can I get you into these odd positions that you need to, I can do it without extra load on you, like a barbell or a dumbbell, although sometimes I might use that. But here's the kicker. I can now reinforce that movement subconsciously with power plate 30 to 50 times per second. Wow, in as little as 60 seconds, I've done thousands of contractions in those positions potentially. That can help me mitigate the risk of getting injured when I do it for real. Couple of key ingredients. At Pivotal, we have 6. I'm only going to share 1 or 2 very briefly, and then we're going to get into how we apply it on power play. But we believe that as a coach, you're kind of like a head chef. And until that athlete, client, patient walks through the door, you're not exactly sure what you're dealing with. You got an idea, but life changes. I don't know about you, it changes by the day, by the hour. And so if you haven't seen your client for a few days, assume that something's changed mentally, emotionally, physically, nutritionally, lifestyle since you last saw them. So what are some of the key ingredients we can anchor to build infinite recipes? Because as a head chef, you have to cook whatever recipe they need. This is critical for injury prevention. Because if I have a fixed linear way of fixing the problem, but then they walk through the door with a dynamic, ever shifting problem, I need to change my mindset. One of our guiding principles is this: there is only movement. I don't care if you're yoga, Pilates, aquatics, strength conditioning, performance, sport, personal training, group exercise. All we are designed to do is move in life. In fact, when we come out of the womb, it's not movement that drives us, it's the conscious task. That conscious task drives a subconscious response in the body. That doesn't change later in life. We've just changed the way we coach it. Now, there are times we have to consciously be aware about posture and movement, but actually the magic, whether I'm picking up my kids, kicking a soccer ball, walking the dogs, is that there's a task and my body responds to whatever happens. So whether that's the baby looking for mum, looking for food, avoiding a scary environment, seeing something cool and shiny and wanting to grab it, that's the conscious task, and it drives a subconscious reaction. So if that's how we are designed neurologically, and that's how the body responds physiologically, and it does, then that's probably how we should move on the power plate. Second ingredient, life is in 3D. Very rarely are we linear. And even when we are moving linearly, let's say the rare occasion someone in sport runs in a straight line, very rare, track and field, breakaway in football, most of life is multi-directional, stop, start, changing gears. But let's say we've got that straightaway linear movement. Actually, the joints in the body are never moving linearly. In order to run in a straight line, all you're really doing is rotating. So even though you're going straight, your foot and ankle, your hip and pelvis, your thoracic spine, your shoulders are actually going in multiple planes. So if the body is designed in 3D, it functions in 3D to get the most injury prevention on the power plate, we should be moving in 3D. And again, I'm going to show you that in the videos. But before we do that, I want you to stand up where you are and do one simple thing with me to show your body that this is inherently true. I'll show you first. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to stand with my feet at 12 o'clock and I'm not going to move. I'm going to take my right hand, stand tall, and I'm going to rotate to the right 3 times as far as I can go pain-free. Don't think about it, just go get it. Now on the third one, hold it and get a visual marker. Hold. Mine is the light on my left-hand side. That's how far I can rotate. So go get yours. Toes at 12, 3 times round. Just go naturally, like you're backhanding something, throwing a frisbee. On the third one, get a visual marker. Got it. Now, go back to your original position. Take your left foot and ankle and roll it out onto the lateral aspect. We would call that supination. You're in a supinated position. Left foot and ankle is rolled out. You're on your pinky toe, lateral edge, your big toe, inside arch are not on the floor. Okay, put that right hand up, go rotate, see if you can go as far. For me, and I'm going to make the assumption that for 99.9% of you, you couldn't go as far. In fact, it was a big difference. So let's imagine we got someone, and one of the things we want to do is improve their rotation. In particular, thoracic spine, getting those shoulders. It might be I've got a pitcher or a quarterback or one of my 60, 70, 80-year-old clients at Midtown who play tennis 3-4 days a week. That's how they enjoy their retirement, is playing tennis nearly every day. And they have to throw the ball up and rotate to serve. But they don't have the range of motion they need. Ouch, it leads to back pain, shoulder pain, neck pain, elbow pain. So we work on thoracic rotation. Here's the problem. When you moved your left foot and ankle, you saw how much it affected your ability to rotate. I didn't change your spine, I changed your foot. By moving your foot, it affected your spine. We know that the body is one connected system. The task I gave you was to rotate, to take your hand. But by moving your foot, you couldn't do it as well. So when we look at injury prevention, especially on power plate, we need to be moving as an entire system in 3D with some kind of task or driver. Next, transformational zones. Think of this. If I asked everybody on the call to jump as high as you could, the first place you would go is down. You would go down to explode up. If I asked you to throw a ball forwards, the first place you take it is back. Ask you to hit a ball, the first thing you do is pull your back to swing. In most of life, we go the opposite direction first. And the reason is we call it a transformational zone. Anytime we start and stop a movement, anytime we change direction, anytime we load to explode, load the system to explode the system. Load the system to explode the system. The body intuitively knows that that's how we work most efficiently. So when we are training using techniques, especially on power plate, to make sure people can get there and get back, what we would call a pivotal or transformational zone, two things. One, can you get there? Yes or no? If you can't get into position, that's an injury, because you're going to get there one way or another, whether it's tying your shoelaces or reaching for that low tennis ball drop shot or picking up your kids. You're going to get down there because life tells you need to. But if you don't have the right positioning to get there, that's an injury. Number two, you might be able to get there, but you can't get back. We see this all the time. People that pull their back, hurt their back, picking up a suitcase or picking up socks off the ground. They could get there, but the minute they tried to get back, stuff went wrong. Often we find, I see it in the gyms every day, lunging, squatting, pushing, pulling. People can get in position, they can't get out. That means your transformational zone is not serving you. We need to be able to get in and out of our transformational zones effectively. Look at that screen. Yes, you've got it on one corner like an Olympic lifter. Oof, but look at that, look at Djokovic in the middle. His lower body is going down and forwards, meanwhile his upper body is going up and backwards. His spine is extending, rotating, laterally flexing, the complete opposite to the lower body. And he's got to accelerate that racket at potentially 140 miles per hour. You might be able to get there, but if you can't get back, that's an injury. Now go down to the bottom. If you live in Chicago, like I do, this is like freaking 5 months of the year, right? Shoveling. And it's not just young, healthy, quote, people. It's everybody that needs to live life. Look at the transformation zone of that. Lateral, got to bend, flex. Oh, then under heavy load, can you get out? Under a heavy load, getting in is not the problem. Pulling that snow out is the problem. These are all great examples of transformational zones. And then last, look at that parent throwing the kid. First of all, you've got to go down and get the kid, transformational zone 1. Then you've got to be able to lift them, throw them, number 2. And then the big one, the most important, catch them. That's the big one, right? And now you've got that load coming down, you have to decelerate. So when we talk about injury prevention, these kind of things need to be considered. Last principle to share, stability. Big discussions in injury prevention as well as just efficient movement around mobility and stability. And I'm bringing this up because power plate is an absolute game changer in upgrading both of these. And they're the videos that I'm going to show you. So what is mobility? Mobility is your ability to have motion. Thus the word mobility, your ability to have motion. Stability is your ability to control that motion. I spent too many years complicating this. The reality is that you need both to have optimal positioning, postures, ranges of motion. If I don't have enough mobility, I can't get into position. If I don't have enough stability, I can't control it. That's a real train wreck. And I see this with my gymnasts, my dancers, my yoga instructors, who have incredible ranges of motion, but sometimes it goes outside their bubble when they don't have the stability, strength to get it back home. A lot of my male athletes, especially like rugby or the traditional bodybuilders, they don't have the requisite mobility. Both of them are an injury waiting to happen. So when I get asked the question, how much range should you have? The answer is very simple. Only as much as you can control. So if you're working on mobility with vibration, you've got to immediately upgrade the stability to control it. But if you already have the mobility, but you don't have the stability, you need to be using vibration to upgrade the stability, or that mobility is going to be an injury. We call this most stability. Comes from the Gray Institute, Dr. Gary Gray. What we love about the word is your most stability. This for us is your capacity to get in and out of your transformational zones, whether it's tying your shoes or serving a tennis ball. So you're going to see in the videos a big emphasis on most stability. It's not mobility and stability, it's the integration. And I have found in my experience, this is one of the biggest benefits of authentically using vibration in our preparation stages and between sets as an active rest. So let's give you a real example right here. I'm going to give you several, but let's take this process, this thought process that I've shared, and put it into an everyday athlete, not a pro, maybe competitive, just someone who likes to golf. Okay, the most common injuries in golf are low back, shoulder, elbow, wrist. However, there's also a lot of hip labral tears on the trail leg, meaning the back leg. So if I'm a right-handed golfer here and I do my backswing, the right leg is the trail leg. The left would be the lead leg. Interesting that more injuries and tears occur on the back leg than on the front. Interesting to know. Another thing that's important here is if you're talking about injury prevention, you need to know what are the most common types of injuries in that population. If we don't even have a basic understanding of that, injury prevention is pretty much not going to happen. What research also shows us is that from a mobility standpoint, to prevent those injuries, right? That's the point, that's the dot I'm connecting, is that the ankle, hip, and thoracic spine need a ton of motion in the frontal plane, side to side, and the transverse plane. We're very dominant in the sagittal plane. We do a lot of our mobility, stability work as human beings in the gym, sagittal plane. But what the science shows us is actually side to side and rotation is more important in this population to prevent those injuries. But if you have that mobility, you now need the stability. In particular, look at this, lower extremity, foot and ankle and pelvis. If they're not stable from the ground up, if the foot and ankle aren't stable, if the pelvis isn't stable, you're creating all of this rotary power with this tremendous acceleration, tons of forces going through the spine, through the shoulder, through the elbow, but you didn't have a stable base. So that's kind of like firing a cannon from a canoe. It's going to go somewhere, probably not where you want. And so these forces go through the body and they end up, ouch, joint pain, soft tissue injuries, tears, sprains, and strains. So they're the injuries for this population. That's the mobility requirements and the stability. We apply this same thought process to everybody. Our kids, our adults, our active aging, regardless of whether it's general pop, athletic, it's the same thought process. So a key concept with a golf would be, man, I've got to decelerate that club, then I've got to accelerate that club, and then I've got to follow through with that club. I've got the set position, the backswing, the strike, and the follow through. Wow. Question is, do your clients, if they play golf, could be tennis, could be just tying the shoelaces, what are the transformational zones? Do they have the ability to get into those? Do they have the mobility and stability to get there and get back? If they don't, it's my suggestion that's where you start. Before we worry about building a bigger engine, more power, more resiliency, if you can't even get into the required transformational zones, the chances of getting injured go up exponentially. Because you would do whatever you got to do to swing that club, right? Because the only thing a golfer cares about is getting around in less shots. They'll take the pain if it means that they win. So here's the thought process. I now would take that person and I say, golfer, I now know that they've got a set position, a backswing, then they got to decelerate it, then they got to accelerate it, strike the ball and go to follow through. So I have to be thinking foot and ankle, hip and pelvis, thoracic spine. What planes of motion? Sagittal, yes, but maybe even more frontal and transverse. I now have the directions for my injury prevention program because it's based on what I now understand about the movement they need to do and the skill demand. Remember that at the beginning, movement quality, movement demand, movement skill. That's how I'm connecting the dots here. So in this golfer, I'm going to use power plate right now to prepare faster. Why? Because to get that golfer, limit their potential for injury, power plate's going to allow me to increase blood flow, which in turn, that circulation is going to warm the tissue. Thermogenics, maybe the most important part is actually thermogenics, warm up, literally warm up. Tissue hydration. If you've got dehydrated tissues, which most people do sitting down all day, it's kind of like asking a dehydrated sponge to lengthen. Actually, if you stretch a dehydrated sponge, it's going to tear. And when it tears, it lays down more band-aids, scar tissue, to stop you from doing it again. How many times have you or your clients felt, man, I stretch my hamstrings, I stretch my calves, stretch those hip flexors every day and they're always tight? Probably means it's the wrong medicine. Very often dehydration is a big part of that. So power plate allows me to turn on blood flow circulation, hydrate the tissues, increase the temperature. Check, I've already lowered the chance of injury. Now, tissue extensibility, length. Can it give you more length? Anyone who's been on a power plate will know like how quickly you can gain length in any of your tissues. But I would argue more importantly is mobility, the actual range of motion across multiple joints. You might have a nice flexible calf and hamstring, but if you can't get into that squat position to pick your kid up, that's a mobility issue, not a flexibility issue. Power plate upgrades both of those. Encourages motor learning, motor control. What's that? It's the conversation between my brain and my body. Nervous system, muscular system, or what I would say the neural myofascial system. That's the game. If you want to improve control of movement, mobility, stability of movement, so that it actually makes the skill better, how smart can we get the phone call between this brain and what the rest of the orchestra? And then maybe the impact it has on stability to quickly subconsciously turn on those deep stabilizers and proprioceptors. There is nothing in the industry that does that. It is arguably the biggest reason that I was brought in 17, 18 years ago, to see how I can not only increase range and thermogenics, but immediately people had better positions, better posture. They were more stable under the bar. I was like, wow, somehow it's making people more stable. That's how, because it's subconsciously activating those deep stabilizers that it's really hard to do consciously, right? In fact, it's impossible. So the example was golf. I want to show you now how I would actually, and have, put that into a very simple golf warm-up to help prevent injury. Okay, he's in a half kneeling position. He's in his backswing, right? Transformational zone. Literally put him in a transformational zone. He drove his pelvis forward and back. Then he drove it side to side. Ooh, now he's driving it into rotation. Huge. Now we're going to get not only a little bit of hip, but look at that thoracic spine and shoulder. By driving the pelvis, now he's going in the frontal plane. Yes, those hips are going to ABAD duct, but that thoracic spine is going to laterally flex. Hugely important. Remember that image of the golfer, how much their spine laterally flexed? Now we're going to use the arms. We're going to drive that thoracic spine into rotation. Kind of important if I want good X factor on a swing, right? Now we've gone up a notch. We've gone from mobility to stability. Single leg balance, whilst toe touching with the other leg, that would be the trail leg. Let's show that one again. Let's go back here. So the emphasis here is as he steps away, he's right-handed with the trail leg, it means that the leg that stays home, the left leg, needs to demonstrate the stability to hold him up and bring him home. Because if that left leg does not have the stability to control the motion, that's either a medial knee problem or a medial hip problem. Because he's now got his entire body rotating. If that medial groin and hip can't stabilize him, good luck coming home. Often what happens is instead of giving up the groin, it will give up the low back. So it's like, ouch, rotation hurts my back. The reason it hurt your back is probably because your hips weren't doing their job. So now he's on not more, yes, there's mobility in this, but it's a big emphasis on stability. Now he's going to the follow through. Yeah, I like that. Now he's changing his foot positions. Again, in our system, what we teach you is you can tweak foot positions, forward and back, side to side, in and out, combinations to elicit different mobility and stability responses. So there's always a reason to why we would change those foot positions, because of the impact it has on the foot, hip and pelvis, and the spine. But while he's doing it, that plate is reinforcing it 30 times a second, 30 times a second. 1 to 2 sets of those, that's 1,800 contractions. That's like jet fuel for the nervous system. So this is all just part of our prepare faster. Some mobility work, some stability work, but it's specific to the joints motions we need and the skills we need. Swinging a club, In the posture we need set position, backswing, follow through. It's very specific. Now he's adding all of those ingredients into the final recipe of actually going from backswing, contact point to follow through. Show another couple of quick ones so I can get time to open this up. Ooh, how many people do we coach that run? Lots. Whether it's intermittent interval types, continuous long distance, whether it's playing sport. There's some basic fundamentals about running that we need to know to prevent injury. Front leg needs good triple flexion. Back leg needs good triple extension. I need good thoracic rotation and good shoulder extension flexion at a minimum to prevent injury. What might that look like on the power plate? Boom, let's have a look. Releasing the plantar fascia. So we're releasing the underside of that foot. Often that's the cause of so many big toe issues, calcaneal issues, Achilles tendon and calf issues. So we're doing some soft tissue work on the power plate, really hydrate that tissue. And we're doing it in 3D. I'm not just going forward and back, side to side and rotate. Get those tissues in 3D. Okay, that back leg now, I've got dorsiflexion. Boom. If you look at that back leg, I got dorsiflexion of the ankle. I got extension of the knee. I got extension of the hip, extension of the spine. That's what running posture looks like. Meanwhile, the front leg is in triple flexion, hip, knee, ankle. So if I'm going to mobilize to run, it should kind of look like running. But the fact I'm doing it on the power plate, I get the circulation, the thermogenics, and the activation all in one. So we've got to understand the complex, but ultimately to make it simple. Is it a calf stretch? Yeah. Also, foot and ankle. Yeah. Also hip. Yeah. Actually, also spine. I'll tell my client, we're stretching your calf. But the movement is actually creating the subconscious response I really need so they can run and not get busted. And I'm driving my knee across now to really get that foot on the plate to lift, supinate. I need that when I'm running. Hips and T-spine, back leg. Look at that. One leg's forward in flexion, one leg's back in extension. But I'm going to get that spine in the frontal and the transverse plane also. When you break down the mechanics of running, you're moving in a linear plane, but actually the joints are going in all three. Huge. This is a lunge pivot. And what does that mean? One leg stays home, one travels. It's a much bigger demand on that stance leg because the other leg is constantly moving. Here's why this is so important. When you are walking, you are on two legs, one leg, two legs, one leg. Just walk around your room right now and you say, oh, there's a moment where I have two legs, and then there's a moment where I lift and I'm on one. But when you're running, you are always on one. Your legs cross or exchange in the air, and then the opposite foot lands. At no point are you on two legs. So part of our injury prevention isn't just the mobility stability, it's to make sure they got the strength to be on a single leg whilst the other leg swings through and still maintain the mechanics we need. Often people get busted running because they don't have good running mechanics. Not strength, not endurance, not posture. No, they don't actually know how to run, or they don't have the same strength on one leg as the other. So imagine you were a car and you've got flat tires everywhere, 4 flat tires. If you've got 4 flat tires, you won't go very fast. But if you've got 1 flat tire, you're going to pull. Now, if you've got 1 flat tire and you're going at 100 miles an hour, you're going to crash. This is what's going on in people's bodies all the time. They have these little asymmetries, or what we call flat tires. A big one in running is I've got to make sure that your left leg is just as stable when it's holding me up as the right. But the pattern should look a little bit more like running, which this does. Yeah, single leg squat with knee drive, really popping up to get into that top running position. Simple movement, profoundly effective. One more. Woo, soccer. My gosh. You know, girls between 14 and 16 are 400% more likely to get not only 1, but 2 ACL tears, non-contact. So much is because they're not taught how to move effectively. Yeah, we're doing some soft tissue work on the medial groin. Yeah, and we're getting it falling back side to side and rotate. Not only is the groin important in terms of muscles, but actually when you look at the lymphatic system, our immune system, you know, gets the toxins out, helps to decrease inflammation. The amount of it that goes through that groin is so powerful. We also have the vagal nerve going through that groin. A lot of injuries in the groin are not because they didn't have the right strength or motion. It's because the fluids weren't pumping right. So a lot of soft tissue work is to get the fluids going through the groin. That is injury prevention. Right, we've got some bands. We love using the bands, create that extra tension. For those vibration geeks on the call, you know that where tension goes, vibration follows. Putting a band on so that they can actually now create tension in different parts of the system, vibration is going to go. So if I know I've got a client who's maybe got stronger left glutes and hips than right, I might need to create more tension on the left and then let the vibration do the magic. Hamstring stretch, but he's doing it in 3D. Whenever you run, play sport, your hands are usually working, right? You don't run with your arms by your side. And what we found is when those arms move, profoundly affects the rest of the body, just like when we did our rotation. If I move my foot, it affects my shoulder. If I move my shoulder, it affects my foot. So a lot of what we do for injury prevention is make sure that the arms are driving the way they need to go to get the response down below. Also making sure the legs are going where they need to go to drive the spine. We're big on driving the motions we need subconsciously. Now, one more coming up, and I'll open it to Q&A. I want you to see something that Steve-O does at the end here. He's going to add some what we call activations that we think are really, look at that move. That's what it looks like when you actually kick a ball. When you run in to kick a ball, your arms are flailing behind you. Look at this. He's doing little mini plyometrics whilst on the plate and mobilizing. This is mobility, stability, and neural activation in one and in 3 planes. That's insanely difficult to do. But boy, the impact that will have on preventing injuries, especially non-contact in our soccer players and girls, unreal. So I'm going to stop it there because I know we're going to run out of time a little bit. And I'm going to go to, oh, I think I've lost you. Have I lost you here? Okay, going to open it up to Q&A to see what we've got. But before I go, if anything I've shared with you was of value, sparked your curiosity, you'd like to learn more, there's some simple ways to get hold of us. And actually in our online courses and our live mentorships, we integrate vibration into everything we do. So especially the live. So if you're interested in seeing how we really piece vibration into our entire methodology, drop us a line. All right, Jay, what we got?
So the first question from Lydia is higher frequency better than lower? As they have a Pro 7 at their facility, people believe bigger is better. Higher the frequency, the more the benefit. Can you explain the level of frequency and the benefits of the varying levels of frequency?
Perfect. Great question. Part 1, if bigger was better, I'm in trouble. I'm 5'7", 159 pounds wet through. Let's hope bigger is not better. Frequencies and amplitudes together. It's not just frequency. I could have 50 hertz, high frequency, low, or I could have 40 hertz, but high. 40 hertz high is much more false than 50 hertz low. So you can't talk frequency without talking amplitude. That's part 1. The guidelines are pretty clear. If we're in preparation, mobility, stability, hydration, etc., it's going to be low frequency and amplitude. Here's why. A, you don't want to fatigue the system, right? You're trying to stimulate. If we've got an entire practice or training session coming up, the last thing I want to do is fatigue it in the first 10 minutes. So would I want high frequency in a warm-up, what we call preparation? Absolutely not. The other thing that will determine it is their capacity. Maybe they're really strong and powerful, but they've just played 2 soccer matches at the weekend and today is their first day of recovery. I'm not going high frequency, it's a recovery day. So it depends. However, when it comes to say strength training, the guidelines would be this: low frequency, low amplitude. That's where everyone starts. NFL, World Cup rugby, or my mum and dad. Because it's a neurological fatigue as much as it is mechanical. 30 low. Then frequency goes up. Okay. Next progression. Amplitude goes up, but frequency has to drop back down. Then the third progression is frequency and amplitude go up. The final one is then we add mass, dumbbell, barbell, Viper, whatever. We explain it in our courses, but frequency, low, amplitude, low. Frequency goes up first, dial it up. When they've adapted to that, could be weeks, could be months. Amplitude goes up. But when amplitude goes up, you've got to drop that frequency back down because it doubles the magnitude of force. Then you turn up both dials. Finally, we'd add mass. Does that answer the question? Does that help?
Yes. Thank you, Scott. And for the last question we have time for, we have recommendations for exercises on power plate for people with spinal cord injuries and neurological injuries, particularly focusing on core and pelvic stability.
No. Remember my slide? It depends. So I've worked with people with traumatic brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, you name it, MS, Parkinson's. What we can't do is say, because they've got this condition, I'm going to give you this. It depends on the context. It depends on the grade of not only the primary condition, but the secondary impairments. I could have someone with spinal cord injury that's actually able to ambulate and someone who's stuck in a wheelchair. That is a very different approach, right? So it depends. What I would say is this, a couple of guiding principles. Assuming you're within their threshold, they can handle what you're going to give them from a movement demand and a vibration demand. I would argue the whole system needs to be upgraded. Proprioception is queen. Now, some of the biggest ways we can turn on proprioception, yes, through the pelvis and spine. You're 100% correct. But you forget some of the biggest proprioceptors in the neurofascial system are in our hands and feet. I'm a big advocate of getting feet on that platform, hands on that platform to get the entire phone line going. I'm not saying they're doing push-ups. That would be ridiculous. However, I've never met them. Maybe they can do an abridged version of it. What I would say is you want vibration to go through the whole system to turn on proprioception. Number two, find the areas where you need to create tension and drive a movement to do that, because then the vibration follows the tension. So we're very biased towards the spine. I understand it. But you know, 80% of the mechanoreceptors in the feet respond to vibration. Sounds like a good idea to get the feet on it.
Thank you, Scott, for the time. That is all we have time for today. So I want to thank everybody for coming. I want to thank you, Scott, for presenting. And I hope that everybody found this to be as enlightening and enjoyable as we did.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me. Again, reach out. Please reach out about the content or learning more about what we do, because vibrations really integrated it, and you will get a response from me. Cheers.